He had nothing, no money, no friends, just a worn-out coat and the weight of the world on his shoulders. Every day was a fight to survive, every glance from others a reminder that the world had already written him off. But one moment, one encounter, shattered everything he thought he knew about justice, dignity, and the color of opportunity. What he faced that day wasn't just personal, it revealed a truth too many refused to see. Could one man's suffering change the way we look at the world? Or would it be erased, like so many stories before his? It was another quiet morning in the heart of the city. Marcus had learned early that life didn't hand out second chances. Every day, he worked long hours, sweeping streets, washing windows, doing anything to put food on the table. His hands were rough, his back ached, but his spirit, quiet, resilient, kept him moving forward. At home, the apartment was small, barely enough for him and his young son, Jamal. The walls held laughter, dreams, and a love that made the harshness of the outside world almost bearable. Yet, outside those walls, the world didn't see Marcus as a father, a man, or even a human being. It saw his skin, his uniform, the life he was born into. On that morning, as he kissed Jamal goodbye and stepped onto the bustling streets, nothing seemed unusual. Cars honked, vendors shouted, life continued as always. But there was a tension in the air, subtle and invisible, something he couldn't yet name. Something that would test not just his strength, but the very core of who he was. Every face he passed carried a story, and today, some of those stories would collide with his own in ways he never imagined. He was just Marcus, a man trying to survive, but the events of the day would show how society's prejudice could turn an ordinary life into a battle for dignity. And it all started with a single moment, a look, a word, a choice, that would set everything in motion. Marcus had barely made it to the corner store when it began. At first, it was subtle, a few stares, a pause in someone's step, whispers that seemed to follow him down the street. But then, the insults came, sharp and cutting, thrown like stones. "Go back where you belong," someone sneered from across the road. He clenched his fists, swallowing the anger that bubbled up, reminding himself, today was about groceries, not confrontation. Yet everywhere he turned, the world felt heavier. A security guard watched him like a predator sizing up its prey. Customers kept their distance, eyes sliding away, as if his very presence was wrong. Even when he tried to laugh off a comment, a sharp voice snapped, "Don't think you belong here." Every word, every look, pressed down on him, reminding Marcus that the world had already made its judgment. Then came the moment that would change everything. He was leaving the store, bags in hand, when a police officer stopped him. No warning. No explanation. "Step aside," the officer barked. Marcus froze, heart pounding, as the officer's eyes scanned him, not for safety, not for reason, but for something else, something invisible yet painfully clear. He tried to explain, to show his bags, to smile, anything to prove he was harmless. But the officer didn't listen. Words escalated into shoves, a scene forming that drew the attention of everyone nearby. Passers-by murmured, some turned away, some pulled out phones. Marcus's stomach sank, he realized the world didn't see him as a man today. He was a threat in the eyes of the people who should have protected him. As he was pushed against the curb, his mind flashed to Jamal. His son's laughter, his tiny hands reaching for his own, would he ever see them again? Anger, fear, and disbelief collided inside him. The injustice wasn't just personal, it was systemic, suffocating, undeniable. And then, in the chaos, a moment of silence. Just long enough for Marcus to catch his breath and see the full weight of what was happening. A bystander's camera phone hovered, capturing him in a frame that would soon be shared, dissected, and judged. The world was watching, but not necessarily seeing. He pulled himself together, forcing calm into his trembling hands. But deep down, he knew this wasn't over. The incident was just beginning, the story far from finished. Every step he took after that, every glance, every whispered word, would carry the tension forward, building toward a confrontation he hadn't asked for, but couldn't avoid. And as he turned the next corner, a chilling thought gripped him: what if this day didn't end with him standing? What if the world's prejudice was stronger than his will to survive? The shouting grew louder, echoing off the buildings like thunder. Marcus's heart raced, every beat hammering in his chest. The officer's grip on his arm was iron-tight, twisting with a force that burned. "Hands where I can see them," the voice barked, sharp and unrelenting. Around them, the crowd had grown, murmurs turning into pointed stares, some filled with fear, others with judgment. Marcus tried to explain, to breathe, to make them see him not as a threat, but as a man, a father, a son, a human being. But no one was listening. Every word he spoke seemed swallowed by the noise of prejudice. He felt the weight of the world press against his chest, a crushing force made of assumptions, hatred, and centuries of injustice. Then it happened, a shove that sent him stumbling back. Bags spilled onto the pavement. The officer's knee pressed into his side, and the world narrowed to a single, terrifying point: his body against authority, his life against indifference. A bystander screamed for help, another lifted a phone. Marcus's mind raced. What if Jamal saw this? What if the story ended here? Anger flared, sharp and hot, mingling with fear. He refused to disappear, refused to be another victim erased by a system that saw him as less. "Please," he gasped, voice raw, "I haven't done anything." But the words didn't land, they bounced off hardened walls, off hardened hearts. Time slowed. Every second stretched into an eternity. Marcus's entire life, the sacrifices, the dreams, the love for his son, flashed before him. And in that unbearable moment, he realized something chilling yet clear: this wasn't just about punishment or control. This was a test, a brutal reflection of a world that judged him for the color of his skin, not the content of his character. And then, as the officer's glare locked onto him once more, the crowd held its breath, the city seemed to pause, and Marcus understood: the outcome of this moment could change everything, not just for him, but for the world that had been watching silently all along. Marcus finally stepped back from the chaos, hands trembling, heart still racing. The officer eventually released him, but the relief was hollow. The bags, the spilled groceries, the stares, they remained as reminders that nothing had truly changed in the world outside. He walked home slowly, each step heavy with exhaustion, grief, and an unshakable awareness: today could have ended differently. At home, Jamal ran to him, unaware of the danger that had shadowed his father just hours before. Marcus hugged him tightly, feeling both the warmth of love and the bitter weight of fear. That night, he understood something profoundly unsettling: survival wasn't just about strength or perseverance, it was about navigating a world that judged him for the color of his skin, not the depth of his character. The incident left scars, invisible yet indelible. But it also sparked clarity. Marcus realized his story, his struggle, his endurance, was not unique. It was a reflection of a larger reality. A society where prejudice lurked in ordinary moments, shaping lives and limiting futures. His experience was both personal tragedy and collective truth, a stark reminder that racial injustice is not an abstraction, it is lived, breathed, and endured every single day. And yet, within that pain, Marcus found a quiet power, the power to witness, to speak, and to demand change. He understood that stories like his could not remain silent. Each injustice, each whispered insult, each act of discrimination deserved to be named, shared, and confronted. So he rose, not just as a survivor, but as a witness to the truth. A question lingered in the air, one that demanded reflection from everyone watching: how many more must endure before the world finally acts? How many stories must remain untold before we recognize the urgency of change? Marcus's journey was over that day, but the conversation, the reckoning, the fight for justice, it had only just begun.